Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well because today we're talking about music. Today we're talking about some progressive rock, some American progressive rock. Specifically, we're talking about the debut album in 1976 from American progressive rock band Starcastle. There is the cover here. Fun fact about this cover, because I just really love that kind of style of artwork. It's by Alex, what was the name? Alex Ebel or Ebel. I looked it up. They're famous for doing a lot of great science fiction art, but specifically they did the poster for the first Friday the 13th movie. So it's October, Halloween is coming up. Um, so if you think about that famous cover with maybe Jason, maybe someone else, spoilers, on the cover with kind of this silhouette with the Camp Crystal Lake filled in. That's this guy. Even more impressive. Let's check out the roster of the band. Look at these mustaches. Look at these golden locks of hair. Man, I don't gotta say much more. I think, honestly, I think that just sells it right there. But we should probably talk a little bit about the music. It doesn't compare to this, but we'll talk about it anyway. So who are Starcastle? Formed in 1969, Champaign, Illinois. They went through a few different names. They went through Pegasus, Mad John Fever, settled on Starcastle. Um, they're known widely or discussed within prog rock circles as being, a Yes ripoff, a Yes clone. That's all there is. Yes is certainly an influence on here, and I think if you really like Yes in that classic period, you're gonna like what's on here. But there's way more to discuss. There's like way more going on musically, um, specifically if you think about the bands they toured with. So looking up some touring schedules and stats, these guys toured with Jethro Tull, Gentle Giant, Fleetwood Mac, Kansas, Boston, Rush, Journey, tons of others, and I think you get influences from all of that on here as well. And we'll go track by track a bit later, and I think you'll see like, oh, there's way more than just simple Yes going on here. Um, so who's in the band? Very cool. There's a kind of cross pollination going on. You have on lead vocals for this album Terry Luttrell, who had previously been in REO Speedwagon. Notably, he is the lead vocalist on REO Speedwagon's debut, which is kind of their more harder rock, kind of boogie and AOR influenced album, which is really cool. So you got that kind of crossover going on here. You have Matthew Stewart, who's on backing vocals, electric guitar. Stephen Hagler on backing vocals and electric guitar. Gary Strader on backing vocals, bass guitar, and a Moog Taurus, which is, if you've ever seen clips of Rush live, you might know Geddy Lee has those kind of foot pedal synths. That's what that is there. Um, Herb Schilt on piano, synthesizers, and organ, and Steven Tassler, who does drums and percussion and backup vocals. So this is their debut, 7 tracks, just over 40 minutes. It's a really great length. You got some longer tracks, you got some transitionary tracks, you get a little bit of everything in it. It's like, this is a really cool debut. It's a solid, kind of well thought out, well put together piece of music. So let's talk about the Yes influence because I think that's going to come across more so than a lot of their other influences. And while that's there, it's almost like they're taking Yes from right around this period, they're even reaching into like Going for the One and Tormato, which hadn't come out yet. This is 1976, so Going for the One and Tormato would be released soon, and certainly Yes as a band were kind of touring some of these songs, but you're not really getting stuff from like the Yes album or Fragile. That's a little bit on here, but I'd say most of that Yes influence is coming from Relayer and sections of Topographic Oceans, and not Close to the Edge as a track specifically, but and You and I and Siberian Khatru from that album, I'd say are influences on here. But that's, I think, important to note is that they're almost more contemporaries at this point than they are just kind of ripping off a sound. Um, there's also a lot of pomp and bombast that I would associate with groups like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, especially on the second side, with the drumming work. The drumming is really heavy on this, which is really, really cool. And if anything, that's how I would describe this band. Yes is an influence, but they're a little bit harder, a little bit more melodic. They have a bit more of an AOR influence, And even song structure wise, I'd say they're kind of drawing on creating these kind of big thematic pieces and more featuring solos from the band and kind of structuring their songs almost in a more traditional sense there. Similar to groups like Kansas and some of the other American contemporaries. So let's go track by track on here. We open up with Lady of the Lake. That's probably one of their more notable tracks or noteworthy tunes. It's 10 minutes long. It's probably maybe the most yes-ish song on here. It's really, really good. I think if you're going to pick one song to know if you like this band or not, you could. The first track on the debut is a great place to start, which I think speaks to the strength of this band. If your opening track on your first album is incredibly representative of kind of a specific sound, you've succeeded, right? That's amazing. Next up, we go to Elliptical Seasons. It feels sort of like And You and I, again from Close to the Edge. It's a little more mystical, not lyrical. Lyrically, I don't know how you get more mystically lyrical than John Anderson. And it kind of floats along. It doesn't feel quite as hard. It almost feels maybe a little overshadowed. Side one is only 3 tracks, and the opening is really strong. The next track I'll talk about is really, really strong. So it's good, fun and breezy and light, but it feels like it doesn't kind of keep in pace with the other 2 tracks. So track 3 is Forces, which I really, really like. That's a great tune. It has like a really thick feeling, like it feels really chunky and rocky and kind of heavier than the other 2 tracks, and that's really enjoyable. There's some really, really good guitar work on this as well. Reminiscent of Steve Howe, sure, but it's, again, a little harder, a little bit of a harder edge. So side 2 is really, really cool. That's where you get 2 pieces, which again, I'll talk about that, are purely instrumental that almost feel like bridges on their own. Maybe they thought about doing, side 2's just 2 lengthier tracks or 1 lengthy track, but they decided to sort of divvy it up into pieces. So we open with Stargate, which is a really nice way to kind of opening it, and it almost it feels like a good framing. Like it lets you know what's coming up in a really, really fun, really, really intricate, really cool way. And that just sort of flows right into Sunfield, which is the second longest track on the album at 7.5 minutes. To me, the start, I was like, okay, where are we going with this? It feels like it takes a little bit to get going, but once it does, it almost feels like they're just picking up the pace exponentially. Like it gets better and better, and they double up and they double down, and that's just a lot of fun, really enjoyable. The next track is to the Firewind, which is really, really energetic, and I would say the not hidden gem on the album, but it's my gem on the album. If you know Lady of the Lake, maybe that didn't do it for you, or you've heard that in playlists before, and you're thinking, what else from this album should I check out? To the Firewind is what I would suggest. It's got a little bit of that harder edge, and that flows into the closing instrumental Nova, which is really quick, energetic. So while the opening Stargate kind of is really, really keyboard heavy, it features a lot of really, really cool synth work. To me, Nova, it's all about the drums on this. It feels very Emerson, Lake and Palmery in that it's highlighting the drums, doing really cool, intricate ways to close out the album. And it's just really enjoyable. Like it at 40 minutes, it moves along. It's progressive rock, but it doesn't feel overblown or bloated. It feels good to listen to. Like if you look at that cover, right? Like that's just a very happy, very pleasant, cheesy to some degree, but really good album cover, and I think that describes really well what you have on here. So if you're a fan of Yes's classic period, and you're like, man, I wish they had more albums in that kind of vein, like check this out. I would put this along the same lines as stuff, parts of Relayer, parts of Tormato, parts of Going for the One, kind of. But this is its own thing. It's a little more AOR-y, a little more American, a little more kind of bombast with the Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff going on. And really worth checking out if you're into prog rock but you haven't given Starcastle a chance. So that's their debut, 1976, self-titled. Album cover by the same guy who did the poster for Friday the 13th. So there you go. Happy October. Have a great day, because I'm going to have one. Listen to Starcastle.